My name is Sheryl Lindsay, and I'm she, her, and I'm a program manager.
Hi, I'm Anne Marie and I go by the pronouns she, her. I'm a program manager.
For managers here, I mean, it's a really small organization, and so the managers work to really support the teams, support the work of the teams.
The most important thing I can do is actually help support others to be able to do their work.
The teams here are very experienced, have lots of knowledge, lots of ability, so it's really about sitting down with people individually and as the teams and supporting the work that they're doing with individuals, looking at where there's systemic gaps, how we can do advocacy on a larger scale, and then working with the management team as a whole to, just further the overall vision and mandate of Breakaway.
Having staff that feels supported and heard, and that they have a place to debrief when they have difficult situations that come up, makes it healthier for them. It makes a healthier work environment. We are lucky enough to not have overwhelming amount of teams. We have about 15, 16 people each. So it makes it much easier for people to reach us when they need to reach us, and we're available to them like when they need us.
What Breakaway provides is really highly accessible, harm reduction based services throughout all of its programs. And then each program may have a little bit different focus. For instance, so the satellite program is really focused on providing an addiction medicine piece, right, in terms of the clinical aspect.
We've got the Pieces to Pathway program, working with folks who are LGBTQ in the community and who use drugs.
And then with Toronto Opiate Support, they're doing tons and tons of outreach into community.
We've got a housing program that helps people stay housed through supports.
The Family Youth Initiative, obviously looking at youth and their families, right, who may be having issues related to drug use.
And the HRO program that are working with folks out in the community as an outreach program, but it's mostly working with folks around counseling and case management.
The thing that sort of unifies all of them is the harm reduction philosophy and the highly accessible way that people can come to service here.
There's probably a couple of unique things about Breakaway that come to my mind. One is that we're one of the few places that talks about treatment, but treatment from the client's perspective, not from society's perspective.
Highly flexible, very individualized, so there's no sort of like that the person has to try to fit into our vision of what a service should be or what a program should be.
So it's a harm reduction approach as opposed to an approach that says you need to stop using drugs. It's an approach that says you need to use drugs, you should be using drugs, do what you need to do, but do things safely, take care of yourself. What are your goals?
We really look at what's happening for the person in the moment, how can we best support them, and in the case of the family youth, maybe their family as well.
And people often want to go through a healing process, and they can't do that if they're relying too much on the drugs they have been using to cope.
All the social determinants of health, like around housing, around income, around food security, social inclusion, right? So you can see that sort of also permeates the philosophy and then like the on the ground work here.
And because Breakaway makes sure that there's lots of support and that there's lots of ways of working together, the teams are actually people who come together and want to make things better. We're all coming from the same perspective, so that makes a huge difference in terms of the work.
I really have a commitment to working with folks that are having challenges around substance use, and I really believe harm reduction is really the way.
Partially it touches my life. One of my best friends who died a number of years ago was a woman who had been in and out of the prison system. She had been homeless at some point. She came to live with me for a while, and she's one of my best friends. She had so many awful things happen to her. Drugs was the way that she coped. She taught me a lot about pain and about recovering from that pain and what healing looked like. And I'm happy to say that I was holding her hand when she died. So she didn't die alone, and it reminds me every day why I do this work. If there's a place that people can come and be seen and be accepted for who they are.
Really being with them and able to support them on their sort of path, whatever path that might be.
That's better for everybody. And to have people who are there for you makes the whole society safer, because there's ways that you can work out some of your issues as opposed to having to, go punch somebody in the head, right? Like, the reality is that it's understandable over what some folks have been through, that they feel so much anger. They've been pushed so far away from where they need to be and where they want to be, that they don't have the ability to actually reach out to us. They need us to reach out to them.
Going to people who may not otherwise come here or know about the services, and providing that really essential outreach and engagement, and being as responsive as we can, right? I mean, within reason, of course, within our resources.
Helps everybody else in the community. It helps their family members. It helps people that live in the community around them. It helps people see people for who they really are, as opposed to putting them down as somebody who's just this or just that. That's not who they are. That's their pain that's talking.
Breakaway's been open to developing new services. So like P2P, for instance, right, is like a great example of community identifying a need, coming to the Breakaway, and then Breakaway saying, yeah, this is really important, and we should do this work.
And when we can do that a little bit, and sometimes that takes a bit of time, then people are like, yeah, I actually want things to change. That's what we need to be able to be there and be where folks are.
I think people paying attention to not just the pandemic have also been like hearing and reading stories about how this is the worst the opiate crisis has been. We've had the most overdoses recently, I think, in Toronto in the last couple of months than like ever reported. People that are concerned about that would be looking to support the work that we do here.
So we can afford the space that we are renting here, that we can afford to actually pay staff that they can do the outreach.
So that we can meet those needs in a dynamic way.
What I'd like donors to think about is anybody in your life could be somebody who's struggling. Anybody in your life could be somebody who's been through trauma and pain, and they turn to drugs or alcohol as a way to try to cope with that pain. They need your help, but they also need our help. That's what we do, and we can do that together.